So let's slide into something a little that's been on poker Twitter for a little bit.
Poker Twitter, yes.
Yeah, Ryan Laplante.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So just to give everyone some background, when I started doing that wheelchair campaign for KL, which I started like right when COVID hit, and it was just a fucking mess. Ryan and his team actually donated like I think it was $5,000 towards a van, because I was trying to raise money for a van for KL. And Ryan, like, from the moment I met him, and I just recently met him this year, seemed like a really good guy supporting Black Lives Matter, seemed like fundamentally sound. And then all this stuff came out about his racist rants. And he issued an apology about one of them, and then got backlash because he didn't issue an apology for all of them. And then I don't know if you read his apology letter afterwards.
I think I did, yeah.
And it seems like he's in a state of kind of not knowing what to do next. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the whole thing, wherever you want to start.
Sure, yeah. Well, it's a good time to be talking about this because I just watched the Software vlogcast today with Berkey and Chin talking about this, and I think they largely nailed it in that I think that the concerning thing, I guess, is that I'm trying to think of how I want to kind of broach this. I think largely, I'm for sure in the same camp as you in that I don't know Ryan very well, but I've always perceived that he seemed like a guy who had a good head on his shoulders. He seemed like a guy that cared about what I perceived to be important things and the right things. And he seemed like a guy who cared about doing right by other people. And in addition to that, going all the way back to like 2012, which is actually before I think some of these posts that people have pointed out, I remember he and I having brief interactions on 2+2 where he actually gave me some really valuable advice about my career early when I was just starting out in poker. So he and I have sort of tangentially known each other for a while, even though we've only met in person, I think, once. And I was very surprised when I saw this because it didn't seem like it was in character for him. But the thing that's been, I think very concerning for me is not necessarily the fact that this came out, because it came out and it's deeply disappointing to see this from somebody. But at the same time, I'm willing to, as you say before, when it comes to politicians, I'm willing to believe that the person he is now genuinely is very different from the person he was when he made those statements. And I don't think that people should be, robbed of a second chance when, something that happened a very long time ago can be something. It is entirely plausible that this is something that he just would never do under any circumstances now. However, the thing that concerned me was his response to these posts being dug up, in that he issued that initial apology, and I think he issued it in a way where he acknowledged the racist elements of what he was doing, what he was saying, but he didn't. First of all, he didn't necessarily outline any steps that he was going to take to kind of redress the balance, so to speak, with anybody who might have been hurt or disappointed in him personally. So, for example, somebody, let's say a black poker player who was a subscriber at his site, he didn't address the idea that there might be a lot of people who had invested in him as a coach and as a player who were very disappointed to see that this kind of behavior existed at all in his history. And he also didn't address the fact that this behavior as a whole, even notwithstanding the racist elements of it, this was outrageously aggressive behavior towards other poker players that was seemingly, from what I could tell from the threads, exhibited quite consistently. And the worrying part about it for me is that he seemed, and I said this in a tweet response when he acknowledged that these tweets, these posts were made by him. he didn't seem to acknowledge that it was also very, very troubling that he was threatening people in this kind of way, and that he was out there on forums, believing that all these kinds of very vulgar threats were an appropriate way to act towards somebody. And I think that to a certain extent, yes, it's the internet. People can kind of say what they like without any kind of accountability. But as somebody who has literally never in my life threatened anybody in any kind of capacity, I don't even think I've ever threatened anybody at all, let alone threatened anybody in the way that he would. I can't understand why he doesn't look at that and be kind of horrified, not just by the racism, but by the general approach that he took to interacting with somebody else. Because I would think that somebody who cares about comporting himself in a way nowadays where he's aware he has a public image, he's aware that he has a site that he owns, that he represents, he's a public figure in the poker industry. I was surprised that he didn't sort of take steps to say, like, I was angry, but that doesn't excuse it. Because there was a slight tone in his apologies of, I was really, really angry at this time. And what I would have wanted to see is an acknowledgement that no matter how angry you are, it's not okay to say those things. And that was missing for me to a degree.
So yeah, I initially, again, I'm coming from the perspective of, I don't think anyone does any good by yelling and berating someone from any direction, right?
For sure.
I think like if a racist is in front of me, I would rather, unless they're like belligerent, I would rather talk to them and try to figure out why they think like that and try to convince them otherwise than yell at them. So what I was seeing initially, my first response was, someone's apologizing for really heinous behavior, and no one is accepting that apology. But then reading his apologies, yes, I will agree with you. They were light. They weren't addressing the point. I honestly, and I'm not making excuses for him, but from my perspective, it looked as though he had an anger problem.
Yeah.
With some underlying racism, or use that as like the most cutting thing he could do at the time.
Yeah.
And then it seems someone who has anger problems is usually emotionally immature. They're unable to process things. They don't have coping mechanisms. This is not an excuse for him again. But I'm saying, if he's that emotionally immature and he's saying that stuff even a few years ago, how emotionally mature is he going to be capable? Like, what is he going to be capable of right now as far as an apology? He didn't have the depth to know what he was saying and doing at the time. How would he have the depth to now process that and to reflect and to actually lay out a plan of how he's going to ask for forgiveness from the public, from whoever he insulted, from minorities in America and in poker? Yeah, it was quite shallow. I just think, honestly, I reached out to him and I was like, hey, if I appreciate the reflection. I can see you reflecting, because he did issue an apology. He did try something, but I really think at this point, and you can tell me if you think that he has to do something else, but I think like he needs some sort of like life coach or someone, a friend or someone to like guide him and break this down for him, because I don't know if he's necessarily capable.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
think that's a really smart idea. I think that the way I look at it, and this is kind of the same way I looked at Daniel Negreanu's rant as well,
that was my next thing on the list.
I mean, right, we're segueing, right? But like, it shouldn't be possible for someone to lose control of their emotions to that degree where some situation can emerge that relates to online poker in some way that can cause you to act that way. You know, that the for me, like there is nothing that could happen. There's no insult someone could throw at my wife on Twitch. There's no post someone could make on 2+2 that would cause me to act in that way. And I would like to think that that's because I have the maturity to recognize that these are not things that justify going to that level of expression, because either the pain that you cause people through being racist, or the bad example that you set in public, or any number of other things are so significant that they far outweigh the small upside of you getting to express whatever emotion you're feeling right now that constitutes anger in your mind. You know, the expression of anger is in many cases valuable, because in many cases anger can be an emotion that drives people in directions that are actually productive. But if you're feeling anger to that degree, it's your responsibility to have the self-awareness to recognize this is a fucking problem, and to actually seek out some kind of assistance with that. And it seems like neither Daniel nor Ryan are able to recognize that being able to get angry to the point where someone insults you online, and even if you're doing it as like a sort of performative thing, like Daniel seems to be claiming that he was doing, as this kind of like, oh, I wasn't really actually going to threaten him, which of course, nobody believes you're actually going to, hunt this guy down and beat him up or something. Even if you're doing it in that kind of way, if you have it in you to behave that way, or if you see some benefit in behaving that way, then there must be some part of you that, like, when you're in a calm state of mind, takes a step back and goes, wow, I did not think I could behave like that, or like, I don't want to behave like that again, so I'm going to seek out somebody who can help me with this. And if you look at that part of yourself and say, I'm totally okay with that being part of my behavior, which is actually something Daniel said directly to me. I replied to somebody else in one of the comment threads about it. And I was not expecting this at all, but he chimed in because he was tagged in it. And he said, this is how I look at it. 99% of the time I wouldn't respond like this, and 1% of the time I might get angry at this guy and threaten him. And I was like, I can't believe that the biggest name in the poker industry, who has more influence over this industry than any other single person by a mile, I cannot believe that he thinks it's okay that just, 1% of the time I just threaten a guy on Twitch when he insults my wife. It's like, how do you find that acceptable? That just,
I feel like Mattisau almost had, was more apologetic than Negreanu at this point.
Maybe. I mean, I didn't, to be honest, after the whole thing with Mike happened, I just kind of stopped paying attention, because I just assumed he would never apologize. So maybe, did he apologize? I did
issue a tweet and apologize to her.
Okay.
And she forgave him, and she was really cool. I was like, damn, this girl is like way more chill than I would have been.
Yeah. I saw her initial response where she was like, where she just said it wasn't a slow roll, but next time it might be, or something like that. I didn't see that he actually apologized to her. But either way, there's a lot of egregious behavior going on right now in the poker world, and I'm like floored that these people are still completely okay with what they're doing.
I hate saying this because it does feel like an excuse for poor behavior, but it feels to me that the current environment is making more than just poker players, is making everyone lose it. I mean,
for sure.
my anxiety level is through the roof. I'm reaching out to people to try to learn better coping mechanisms. I'm trying to isolate myself less by going to go, visit friends I go visit Andrew in Santa Cruz. I just think that given all of the circumstances, as human as we are, we still have that primitive portion in our brain. It's so hard for me. I guess I'm trying to be devil's advocate right now, because what I'm saying, I I still think that everything that Daniel did was horrible and not acceptable. But fuck, if there was ever a time to do it, it was during this pandemic when we're all fucked up right now.
I mean, for sure. I'm kind of comparing everything to like the backdrop of how poker is now, because I mean, if this all happened a year ago, excuse me, we'd all be losing our minds even more than we already are, right? I mean, like if this happened a year ago outside of the pandemic context, this would be like of the apocalypse of poker, you know? So I think that the context has everybody looking for, the context has made Twitter a much more emotionally charged place, I guess, in the last 6 months or so, just in general. But I think also what's happening is poker players in particular, everybody's kind of, everybody has anxiety about the future of the industry, in that we're all going through this time where nobody can play live poker really, or it's very restricted, and we're all kind of, I think there's a sense of everybody feels like we're fighting for scraps now because of the way that the industry has been affected by COVID. And I wonder whether that's, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's not just COVID, like Black Friday, and then, you know, like more rake is better, like Daniel basically throwing pros under the bus. I mean, I just feel like everyone wants to be a poker pro, and then no one likes poker pros. No one wants the nit in the game. No one wants the reg, and they're catching it from all ends. And right now is just, I can't imagine being a poker pro right now.
Yeah, it's a weird time for it. The thing that I've kind of noticed over the years, I think, is that poker is a profession that attracts people who like literally the basis of being a poker pro is, I think I'm smarter than these guys. You know, it's like, I think I'm able to outwit these guys for a living. Right. And so when you have an environment where everybody's kind of coming together on Twitter to a degree, and there's no sort of governing body or anything like that. A lot of poker community business is just done via Twitter. So what happens is you've got a group of, you know, hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people that participate in poker Twitter to some degree. And even the players who don't do it professionally, to some extent, are involved in poker because they think they're smarter than other people, you know, or they have enough confidence in their own perceptions of what's going on around them that they feel comfortable sitting down and playing against pros who might be more experienced than them, but these recreational players think, oh, I'm able to compete. I'm just as smart as this guy. And so you have this environment where everybody thinks they're smarter than everybody else. And so nobody's willing to defer and say, this guy knows more than me. And so you get this constant, unending back and forth of opinions where nobody wants to give an inch, because giving an inch would require recognizing, like, maybe I'm not the smartest guy in the room. You know, maybe there are people out there who know what's better for the community than I do. And you end up with no leadership really, because
everyone's an island.
Right. Because nobody is willing to commit to the idea that there are some people who actually do have the interests of the community at heart. And then at the same time, most pros, because they're so worried that making a living from poker is going to become very, very difficult in the coming years, pros aren't willing to do anything that sacrifices even a slight bit of EV for the sake of the community. Because as soon as they start doing that, they feel like they're giving up their livelihood. Yeah. So we end up in this position where everybody's fighting each other constantly. And then anybody who tries to take a leadership position in the community has people that support them, but they also have an equally big army of people who think that they should just be shouted down at every opportunity. And nothing gets done. No meaningful change gets accomplished. No meaningful dialogue is established, because it's a competition to see who has the loudest voice and who can grow their own platform the most rapidly at the expense of everybody else. And I don't mean to call people out specifically.
Are you talking about Doug Polk?
Yeah, I'm talking about Doug Polk. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you what you think of that, like, video he just put out about Daniel that ended up getting taken down.
I didn't watch it. I honestly, I don't think I've ever sat through a Doug Polk video start to finish.
I love Doug, but I think that there are limits to it. I think he took like a really bad Daniel moment and exploited it a bit. But then Daniel not being so asking for forgiveness kind of, I think, rubs Doug the wrong way. And it seems like it seems like that's what we focus on as a poker community. I guess
Yeah.
we have nothing else right now.
Yeah, and I think we like these conflicts. You know, we like when there's some kind of drama in the community, because for whatever else we have that constantly puts us at odds with each other, when there's drama going on, everybody focuses on that. You know, and I think what Doug did, and for what it's worth, like I'm not a fan of Doug's, but I'm also not like I respect what he's achieved in poker for sure. And I think that there's a lot of things that he's done that are really good for the game. But what I do think is kind of hard to deny is that he has quite consistently throughout his career done a really good job of identifying, oh, people like it when I take a shot at this guy. People like it when I take a shot at Jason Mercier, or when I take a shot at Daniel Negreanu. And people watch my videos when I call people out.
I think he's also a little genuine. I know that he gets accused of clickbait and stuff like that. I genuinely think he's like that. I've talked to him on the phone because he interviewed me for the Apostle thing, but before that he called me. And I think he's quite bright and he knows what he's doing, but I genuinely think, like, some of the videos he makes, I think he genuinely doesn't like Daniel. I think.
Oh, I for sure believe that.
Yeah.
I
don't think it's all for show, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I that's the thing. I don't think it's. I definitely don't think it is all for show. I do think there are guys out there that he doesn't like, but I also think that there's an element where I get the impression that his public persona is very carefully crafted, I guess.
Yeah, I mean he is the most advanced troll in the universe. I mean, the stuff he does is next level. He's not trolling on comments. Like, he's putting out high quality edited videos. So
and I think that in itself might be part of why I've never connected that much with what he does, in that for whatever reason, trolling it just doesn't ever feel funny to me. I don't know exactly why. There's not really ever been much that Doug's done that I've been like, oh, that's really funny. Because I can kind of notice that he's trolling, but I don't know. It just, you know how when a joke just like falls flat and you're just like, everyone else tells you something's really funny and you're just like, you know, like I don't get it. That's how I've always felt. Stay off Reddit. It's like,
we don't need you on Reddit.
Oh, dude, I spend God knows how much time on Reddit already. You know, Reddit is my sanctuary from Twitter, because I used to, because I used to
troll haven. What are you talking about?
Reddit is troll haven, but you just have to moderate where you go. Like I'm subscribed to like a bunch of gaming subs, where I don't read all the troll posts, and a bunch of subreddits with just gifs of cats and things like that, you know. So like my Reddit is like where I go to just kind of, you know, view stuff that is basically just meaningless, like occupy my brain stuff, after Twitter, where everything is people arguing and serious stuff, I guess. So I've sort of curated my Reddit feed so that it basically just gives me a chance to decompress, but it didn't used to be that way.
You're not on our poker every day then after Twitter?
I tell you, I haven't been to that place in like 2 years. I cannot stand the poker subreddit. And I guess it's because it's like an even worse microcosm of what poker Twitter is. So I don't go on there. I don't really go on. I read like the politics sub and things like that sometimes just to see what's going on, but I don't. I used to follow a bunch of subs where it was like serious discussions, and I would read like really, and I would actually participate in stuff that was very serious. But at this point, I'm like, my Reddit is all like gifs of cool inventions and cats and like, sports news and things like that. It's all like stuff that is pretty inconsequential. But it took me a long time to curate it in that way. So I had like 4 years of being on Reddit where I needed to stop, but I realized that curating it better was the solution. Yeah.
I love this. It's such an like organic, wholesome, just version of you. The cat memes on Reddit. I love it.
Well, I have two cats. I have to appreciate cats whenever I get the opportunity, because it gives me new ideas of ways to, I get like new ways to play with my cats, and I look at my cats and I'm like, oh, let's teach them to do this and things like that. So it's fun.
Well, you need to get on TikTok. There's tons of cat stuff on there.
I probably do, although I mean, we're coming back around to politics here, but I get weirdly put off by people making this suggestion that TikTok is some kind of like Chinese way of hacking people's computers or something. I don't even know what that's about, but it creeps me out.
TikTok, if someone is, TikTok's like this up and coming place, where like I think the gram right now is like such a fucking grind. If you want to become an influencer, if you want
Yeah.
to, sell something, it's a grind. But TikTok, you could blow up in just like one good video.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like if anyone wants to be an influencer, they should be on TikTok. They should be busting their ass on TikTok. It's like, it's where you'll get noticed now. It's where artists get
Yeah.
noticed. I think it's a pretty cool app. And you can also, it's kind of like Reddit. It's got a pretty good algorithm. If you watch certain videos, they'll keep, you don't even have to like them. It just
Mm-hmm.
follows what you're watching and what you're searching, and it
Oh, cool.
really
Okay.
actually does a good job filtering out the stuff you don't really want to watch.
Uh-huh.
Um, but there
That's
is
good.
like, there is a lot of misinformation on there. So I tell people like, make sure you like look something up if it's like political, because
Right.
some of it's like conspiracy stuff.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sure that's everywhere.
so I wanted to talk to you about Solve for Why,
Sure.
because you are
Yeah,
a coach on Solve
I
for
am
Why.
indeed. Yep.
And so talk to me about how the pandemic has affected, how you're coaching, how Solve for Why is coaching, and, what your next steps are.
Sure. Yeah. Well, obviously, it's affected us quite significantly, given that the majority of what we do is focused on the academy, which is our 3-day events where we actually bring people in to our offices, put them at a table with RFID readers and things like that, and we can't do that during the pandemic. So we had I think a brief period at the beginning where we were kind of a bit lost as to what to do. In that we knew we had to cancel an academy that we had scheduled for the beginning of April. We had 18 people booked to come in, including at least one guy. Like we had a guy flying in from Australia for it and stuff like that. And
Wow.
yeah, and we had to cancel it, and it sucked. And then we, in terms of how it affected my routine, it was like, well, we still have a training site that we run, and we're still making videos for that where we can, but obviously it's going to completely force us to reorganize our business model for a while. And so we came up with the idea of doing a course that would be basically focused on, hey, everybody's stuck at home for a while. Let's give everybody some coaching. So we did homeschool, which was I think in May we ran this, and it was 4 weeks of 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, coaching from myself, Berkey, and Chin. And in most cases, Berkey can't keep the time, so it was like 4.5 hours from him, and then it was
Oh
3
yeah, because he
hours,
doesn't stop
3 hours
talking.
from me and
Yeah.
Chin. Oh, exactly right. So like they all got like God knows how many free hours of coaching from Berkey. But anyway, so we did this, and we ended up running that again in, when was it, June? So we did it in April and then June. That was it. So we did that, and that was a really, I think, a really positive thing. And we've also sort of shifted business model. We dropped the price on the subscription site to $9.99 a month. And my own role at the moment is a little up in the air, because since a big chunk of what I was doing previously was developing content for our tournament academy and things like that, where we would be bringing in, our plan was to bring in people for a 5-day tournament academy for the first time before the World Series. We had been doing 3-day ones previously, but obviously we had to cancel that. So a big chunk of my role kind of got ripped out there a little bit. But I'm obviously still very much affiliated with the company, and we're looking at basically getting things up and running again as soon as we feel like it's safe to do so, as soon as we think that we can safely bring 18 people into our offices for an academy and be reassured that everybody is going to, the risk is going to be low. I think we'll get it started again, and I'll be very happy to get back into a live classroom environment and be teaching again, because I really enjoy that. But for the time being, I think each of us is focused on building content for the site where we can. I know Berkey's doing a lot of streaming, and I think him and Chin are still putting out some training content. I did a webinar, or we call them masterminds, recently about how to use online tracking software and things like that. And I'm still doing a bunch of one-to-one coaching with some of the students that I work with regularly. So my coaching routine in that sense has not changed a ton. But in terms of the company, it's obviously affected us quite a bit. But from what I can tell, Berkey streams have been super successful. And I think everybody's really enjoying having someone to watch who's not going to go on angry, racist rants.
Well, he'll go on rants. They just won't be angry or racist.
Right.
He won't stop talking.
Yeah, this is the thing. This is I think it's funny because there's such a line between him being mad about something and telling some guy to go fuck himself versus like actually threatening someone. That's such a different vibe, because you could tell some troll in Twitch chat to go fuck off and no one's going to care. But like, as soon as you say fuck off or I'll kick the shit out of you, it's like, oh, whoa, okay, And I think Berkey knows where that line is.
Yeah. So poker players out there, be like Berkey.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason.
Get mad like Berkey.
Right. Exactly. And honestly, like there's a reason why he was someone that I was very happy to work with in the first place. He and I first met in I think 2016 when he did an episode of my podcast that I used to do at Tournament Poker Edge, and then before long, he wanted to bring me on board for Solve for Why, and I'm very sort of happy to be part of a company where I do genuinely trust that no one associated with this company is going to go out there and do something that's going to force us into like some kind of public disaster where one of our coaches has gone out and been racist to somebody and we have to like deal with it. Like, I know that's not going to happen because I trust Berkey, I trust Chin, and these things make it so much easier to really be happy and proud to represent a company like that. So I'm really, really happy with what we do. And I'm looking forward to being able to get back into the classroom as soon as COVID relaxes a little bit. But I get the feeling we may have to wait a little while longer before that happens.
I know when you and I first had a conversation off the channel, I was asking you about students and what do you see as a good poker student, in case someone would be interested in either reaching out to you as a coach or for coaching or going to Solve for Why? Like, what makes a really good poker student?
That's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that directly before. I think the best students that I've had are the ones who have the right expectations about the game, in some sense that it's a constant learning process and that there are no quick fixes and easy answers. And the students that I've had that are the most difficult to work with are the ones who come into coaching thinking that the game exists in a way where the people who make a living from it have figured out the answers and all you have to do is get them to tell you what they are. I think that when you start to see poker as a constant learning process where everything exists on a scale of, low EV and high EV and negative EV and things like that, because it exists on that kind of scale, you're always talking about trying to get a slightly better strategy. You're not talking about trying to go from 0 to 100 in a week because there's some magic recipe for how you can just print money. And as long as you understand that, as long as you understand that no poker coach is going to be able to give you all the answers right away, but a good poker coach is going to be able to set you up with the philosophies or the approaches, the beliefs about the game that are going to allow you to start on a path of consistently improving for as long as you play this game, even if that's the next 50 years of your life. People who start out with that philosophy will always succeed, because as long as you understand that it's a process of continuous improvement and not a process of start at A and get to B, and then when you get to B, you just stop coaching and you're just good forever. If you think it's like that, you're doomed, because as soon as you stop improving, everybody else outpaces you. So I guess it's that kind of mentality that makes the best student, I think.
Yeah, and I think that the early days of poker, well, when I say early days of poker, I mean like mid 2000s for me.
Sure.
And I think those days kind of that created that mindset of like these people, like remember those Full Tilt ads and Daniel Negreanu's first book and all this stuff, like these people have this secret and
Yeah.
here's the book and we're going to tell you the secret. Like Annie Duke put out those videos of like if their lips are pursed, that might be they're lying. Like
the mysticism of it, you know.
yeah, and I bought into that for a little bit and it didn't get me anywhere. And had I surrounded myself with people who were talking about perceived ranges and, you know, game theory and stuff like that, I might have been a millionaire by now. But you know what I mean? Like I think there's many variables involved in being a good student or being good at poker.
Sure.
But yeah, the mysticism in it all, that you know, whenever I have friends who are like, I have a friend who plays poker, can you find out if they're good? I'm like, I'll just talk to them for 5 minutes and because I'm friends with enough really good, competent poker players who play high stakes, who've survived this long, who I can tell when they're talking. It's like, yeah, I had a feeling he had ace king. No, that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah. And it's like, for me, it's literally like, I feel like I'm at a point now where pretty much the first sentence I hear somebody say about poker, I can kind of tell whether they're like a winning player or not, just from like the initial perspective that I get. Like if someone says if the first sentence someone says is something about results, like I've been losing at this limit for this long, or I've won. If someone tells me like I'm up X amount at this limit, you know, if they think that's an accurate measurement of where they're at, of how much they've won, that's already a sign that it's pretty likely that the fact they've won that amount was probably due to variance and not because they're actually a winning player. But if someone tells me right away, this is how long I've been playing, these are the concepts that I'm looking to work on, this is how I came into poker, this is what my background is. If someone starts out by telling me something that's not even remotely poker related, that's a person who largely has probably quite a lot of potential, because they recognize that the amount that you've won or lost in poker is much less relevant to anything than, you know, who you are as a person, where you're coming from, what your existing skill set is. So I definitely feel like the more students I work with, the easier it gets to tell, to be able to say really quickly, like even from, sometimes it'll be like, my wife will tell me about somebody that she knows that comes to Vegas every now and again to play poker. And she'll say like, so, you know, he said, or like, it'll just be something she'll relay to me. And it'll be some guy that I've never met, who's probably from a completely different background to me. And she'll tell me something that he said to her about poker. And I'll be like, that guy sucks at poker. Like I can just tell instantly, your friend is bad at poker. Or like, it'll be stuff like, I don't know, just something will come up where there'll be a discussion and somebody will do something which is like one of those markers that it's like, this guy's probably a fish, you know, there'll be a conversation. Like, I think in the past we've had like, somebody will be on TV and some famous person will say he plays poker or whatever, you know, and she'll be like, oh, this guy plays poker. I wonder if he's good. And it'll just be like instantly, I just guarantee he's not, right? Because like, if you're let's say you're an NBA player or whatever, is an NBA player who plays poker recreationally, is he out there like studying ranges and reading books and like figuring out game theory? No, he's just playing on instinct probably, and that's fine. But like, in terms of, is he actually good? Like, well, the default answer is going to be no, because it takes so long to get good at this game. It takes so much effort to get good at this game. So it's kind of like saying, you know, if someone's playing basketball or whatever, like you might have a friend who's really good at basketball, but if you actually compare it to the scale of how good somebody can be at basketball, if you compare him to an NBA player, he sucks at basketball.
Yeah.
And that's the default for everybody. we can be kind of good compared to the average person, but compared to an actual expert, you probably suck. And people who come into poker with that kind of humility of recognizing like, I'm really not that great, or I probably am not that great, a lot of the time they have a lot of potential. But it's the guys who think that they already have the skill set, the guys who think that like, oh, I'm doing really well based on results. A lot of time, those are some of the bigger players who actually have the most losing expectation. Because if you go, I mean, ultimately, to be a losing player at a certain limit over a period of time, you have to be somebody who believes they're winning but actually isn't, right? So on some level, you have to be wrong about your own skill level. So it's an interesting kind of a dynamic, but I think it does get easy over time to identify people who they're either instantly in tune with what poker is and how it works, or they're not. And you can go from one to the other, you can learn, but it gets easier to recognize at the start for sure over time.
I can say that I recognize that I'm shit at poker and I don't have a lot of potential.
Well, the funny part of it is that recognizing that you suck is probably the sign that indicates that you do have potential if you were to put the time and energy in, right?
do.
It's like a paradox.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if I spend some time studying, I just don't put enough effort
Right.
into it.
And that's totally fine. Like this is the thing
I fell out of love with it a little while ago, honestly.
Sure. Yeah.
I
And
haven't been able
don't
to
blame
find
you
it
for that.
again. Yeah.
I don't blame you for that. I think the thing that people in the poker industry seem to forget is that it's okay to not really care that much about being really, really good at poker. You know, like if you're a losing player, but you enjoy the game and you're willing to spend X amount per month in order to keep playing because you enjoy it, that's totally fine. Like what person would say to somebody who had a hobby that was like, let's say someone really loves fishing and they spend $500 a month on fishing.
Right.
And you know, who are we to say to that person, you shouldn't do that? But for some reason in poker, it's like, if you're a losing player, there's some kind of implication of like, why aren't you trying to get better? You know? And it's a weird thing.
That's the Jerry Yangs of the world. That's what Jerry Yang did. He put like
Yeah.
$90 a month aside for poker or whatever, or
Yeah.
$100. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the dream. You know, the poker economy thrives on people who are losing players, but who either believe they're winning players or are willing to play anyway, despite being losing players. And the first group, people who are losing players but believe they're winning players, is diminishing over time because more and more information is available as to what constitutes a winning player and what's not. And someone's able to look at a winning player on TV and say, well, I would never make this play, so maybe I'm not actually as good as this guy. And they start to recognize, maybe I suck, maybe I'm not winning. But the second category is a category that, as long as we keep the game enjoyable, that category will never die out. As long as people are willing to lose money in exchange for the enjoyment of playing, the game will never die. But when people stop enjoying the game, when it stops being fun to sit down and play live poker, that's when the game dies. And that's what I'm concerned about.
I think part of the, part of the ways that people stay bad in the game, besides, you know, doing what I do and not studying, I think I would rather not study than overstudy all the wrong information. And there is just so much information out there in poker. And then it felt like a propaganda campaign of like, hey, if you're losing, you know, that's just poker. Oh, like someone could be losing for a whole year and people are like, did you know that, well, Jonathan Little, I think, talked about how he was like losing for 2 years straight or something like that. You know, Jonathan Little didn't make money for like 2 years, right? And it's just this, like, it makes it okay. And we say that to ourselves. I don't believe that anymore. I'm just like, I need to reevaluate my life and what I'm doing if I'm losing for 2 years straight at poker. You know, and it's not okay. But I think we have this campaign. Sorry?
Yeah. Game selection is a thing. Like if you're losing for 2 years, you're playing the wrong games, you know? Like if you're
at the very least.
Yeah. Like let's say you're a live tournament grinder who has two losing years straight. Like, it's easy to have two losing years. What I mean, it's not easy, but it's plausible to have two losing years as a live tournament grinder if you don't play a ton of volume and things like that. But like, if
Yeah,
you're
that's
losing
tournament. Yeah.
right, but like if you're losing money for 2 years straight, maybe you should think about diversifying and playing some online at lower stakes to make sure that you don't have two losing years. Or maybe you should be selling more action, or maybe you should be, you know, playing lower buy-ins or something like that. Like, there are a lot of ways to mitigate it to the point where these monster downswings don't necessarily happen with as much regularity. And so it's funny, actually, because this relates quite a lot to I mentioned earlier that Ryan Laplante gave me some advice back in like 2012. The advice he gave me was, I was talking with him on 2+2, and I showed him like a graph of my play over a certain number of games. And I was like, I was in a low confidence period, and I thought I was going through this big downswing and everything. And he just looked at my graph and was like, dude, that's not variance. You're playing bad. And that was the best advice someone could have given me at that point. Because up until then, I was blaming everything on variance. I was like, oh, this downswing is so terrible. Like, I'm just going to keep playing, wait for variance to turn around. But what I actually needed to do was get my shit together and improve. And when I did, the variance turned around. But
yeah, but that goes along with the campaign. This is poker's campaign. Oh, it's variance. Oh,
yeah.
everybody's got a downswing. Oh, it happens. You know, you're due, and it keeps people in the game too, right?
It does. Yeah.
The same things that are bad for us as amateurs or as losing pros are the same things that are good for the game, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a weird thing where the game kind of thrives on limited information in a way, not just in a practical sense in terms of how the game works, but it requires a certain percentage of the poker playing population to have an inaccurate idea of how much they're winning or losing. And
that comes not just from misinformation, sorry, not just from lack of information or what you're referencing. I think that also comes from so much poker content out there that is wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, like, I guess I probably didn't convey it well enough that I'm completely agreeing here, in the sense that, like, the poker community needs people to have an inaccurate understanding of exactly what's going on in order for them to keep being willing to play. Because if they really knew what was going on, that they were a losing player, or, you know, they were not winning that much in this game or whatever, if everybody really was making good decisions about which games to play in and which games not to, etc. In other words, if everybody fully understood the information that was exchanged, if everybody fully understood the transaction that they were making when they make a bet, or if they participate in a certain tournament or whatever, then a lot of the time that would result in the industry kind of collapsing. You know, so it in many ways, I think one of the difficult things about the poker economy is that it's not like a lot of other economies, where if let's say you have a business that's providing a product that people really want, and then you have a price that people are willing to pay, it's an exchange where, for the most part, everybody knows what they're getting. Poker is kind of the opposite. It sort of depends upon being an exchange where at least one side is kind of getting screwed. And that's a problem, not in any kind of moral sense necessarily, because everybody's agreeing to the rules of poker. But it does mean that over time, as the information imbalance is corrected, as more information becomes more and more widespread, the incentive for anybody to participate at all kind of is removed, because as soon as the other party is no longer operating under the false pretense that he's good, or like as soon as the wool stops being pulled over somebody's eyes, your ability to actually engage in this game and profit is kind of removed. And what you end up with is I guess when you remove the false information element of poker, you end up with chess, where people can make a living from chess, but it's super hard. Yeah. And you have to be one of the absolute elite chess players in order to make a living from it. And I think that if we're not careful, that's the direction we're headed in. And that's concerning for all pros, I think.
I definitely think that's the direction we're headed in. And I think people like you, and I'm not saying that you don't see it, but you're involved every day, playing every day. and the micro changes that are happening in everyone's improvement maybe aren't as palpable to you. But when I go play, I see a different game than I played the last time. And that when I used to go play recreationally 5 years ago, completely different game. It's gotten so much harder. There's so many more regs. There's so many more people studying. But at the same time, you know, if you ever go into Bay 101 on a Saturday night, it's full of degens too, non-studying degens.
Well, that's a good place to
But
be. But the
yeah,
I mean, it's evident to everybody, I think.
I mean, is Vegas kind of? I hear only bad things about Vegas from pros, right?
Truthfully, I'm probably not the best person to ask. I don't play. It's been a long time since I played live cash. I don't love the online cash environment. I don't love the. I guess. Well, number one, like lifestyle wise, I don't love the fact that if I want to maximize my like hourly rate, I should probably play at like 2 till 6 in the morning. You know, like I don't like that aspect of it. But I also think that the repetitive nature of cash, in that you're playing all hands are basically the same deep stack. You know, there's no change in context from one hand to another. That's why I've always been more of a fan of tournaments, because I like the progression aspect. I like the fact that every hand is different from the previous one. You know, I like that things are fresh each time. You know, that grind aspect to me has never been like super appealing. And so in terms of how Vegas is, I don't see the changes necessarily, but I do see from year to year at the World Series, in the tournaments, let's say, and, you know, online, whether I'm playing online cash, which I play sometimes, or online tournaments, I think that I noticed enough changes to see these effects kind of taking place. And I think there's a lot of negativity around Vegas as a whole, because it's changed. I mean, from what I hear, it's changed a lot. The first time I ever came here was 2015, so I'm not an expert by any means, but I would think from what I hear that the games are still pretty good in a lot of places, but I certainly hear a lot of complaints about like Vegas regs. I hear a lot of complaints about Vegas cash pros in particular, like the mentalities that they have and the sort of suck up every dollar of EV that you can while people are still in the game, you know, that kind of thing. I hear a lot of that. And I think that is something that maybe as an online tournament player, until I moved to Vegas and until I started, you know, talking a lot with Berkey and Chin and people like that about these issues, I had no idea that this was really, you know, such a big deal. But I do think there's something to the idea that there's a pervasive mentality among pros, I guess, that, you know, if this is my job, I have to take it super seriously, which of course everybody respects. But then at the same time, when you try to suck up every dollar, you basically you kill the enjoyment of the game for the recs. And the point I made earlier about like people need to enjoy this game, it's so important. And we can't force people to have different personalities. We can't force people to be gregarious and outgoing at the table necessarily. But what we can do is convince people that like it's okay for you to give up $10 here or $10 there in exchange for making a rack at the table feel a bit more comfortable. You know, it's okay for you to maybe be a bit more casual with the bet sizes that you use, or be a bit more casual in your table demeanor and your general like posture and things like that. You don't have to like stand stock still like Mikita Badzikowski every time you play a hand. It's okay to give off a live tell once in a while, in exchange for like making everybody feel more relaxed, you know, because some tables, part of the reason why I've not enjoyed live cash the times that I've played it is because sometimes you sit down and it's like nobody wants to talk, everybody's there to compete, and if you're going to sit there for like 6 hours, it kind of has to be one thing or the other. It either has to be an environment which is moderately enjoyable to be in, where you're comfortable and you're relaxed, or it has to be an environment where the stakes are high enough and the competitive level is sufficient that you can really get like hyped up and focused and in the zone to play in that mentality. But a lot of the time, if you sit and play 2-5 or 5-10 or whatever with a table full of pros, you know, it doesn't feel it's not exciting. It's not a World Series final table, but it's also not fun. and it's not relaxed. So it's neither one thing nor the other. And suddenly you're like, why the hell am I even here? You know?
Yeah, the last time I played 510 at the Wynn, which is like a couple summers ago, it was the worst. But man, those 2-5 games, you can get shots of tequila, best time.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like if I was going to go play live cash, I'd go play like 2-5 at Red Rock or something. Or like
next time I come to Vegas, once I get this COVID vaccine, I'm going to invite you, and you're going to come. You and your wife come. My girlfriend Alicia and I go together, and we play poker all the time.
Yeah, nice.
Man, the 2-5 games get fun when we get at the table.
That sounds good. We'll do that for sure.
Well, listen, it's 11:20. I have to work in the morning. I waited hours for you.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that I almost won this tournament, but you know,
I'm super.
It was for a good cause.
No, I'm super happy that you got as far as you did in the tournament, and I'm really happy that we made some time to chat. And again, I would love to chat again off interview.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm just like kind of feeling like I'm falling asleep, and I've had a long week.
No, but it was all good. I've rambled a lot.
No, I love hearing you ramble. That was the whole point. I want to hear you talk. No one wants to hear me. You're brilliant. I really enjoy talking to you, and I really hope that you and Solve for Why, you know, things can turn around and business can pick back up, and all the students who are waiting to join you guys can get there soon. And I'm going to be out. Yeah, I'm going to be out to Vegas as soon as a vaccine comes out, which I'm thinking is going to be like January, February. So definitely going to be hitting you up.
Let's hope at some point. You know, certainly the city of Vegas is going to be hoping that happens. So we'll be excited when that does.
It'll take about a year to get everyone vaccinated in the States. I'm just going to wait patiently for my turn because I know like nurses and doctors are their first priority and stuff. So and elderly, of course. So
likewise,
whenever.
I'm a fucking poker player. I'm like bottom of the list in priorities. You know, so, who cares?
I'm getting used to working at home. Like I'm literally sitting at home, but this is where I work also. And I just spend all my time. I'm getting used to it. I'm safe. I'll wait for my turn for the vaccine. But once I get it, I'm going to be on the first flight to Vegas. I'm not kidding you. Sapphires, here I come.
All right. Everybody heard it here first.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate your time, and have a wonderful rest of your night.
Yeah, you too. Take care.